welcome back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe Retrospective, taking a look at each film in the MCU and seeing how well they hold up. Last time we saw the celebration of a decade of filmmaking with Avengers Infinity War, a cinematic masterpiece. Today we look at the sidetrack of the Infinity Saga's closing chapter with Ant-Man and the Wasp. With the first Ant-Man film being a decent hit, a sequel was quickly discussed. Peyton Reed returned to direct, while Marvel branched out for different writers this time. Andrew Barrer and Gabriel Ferrari wrote the initial draft, with Spider-Man duo Chris McKenna and Eric Summers and star Paul Rudd providing rewrites during filming. The Russos also consulted on the film's timeline to fit with Infinity War and Endgame. Another important person in the mix was Stephen Broussard. Broussard had previously worked as Kevin Feige's assistant on a couple of Marvel films pre-MCU. He then became a part of the Marvel Studios team of executive producers and worked on several MCU projects. This movie marked his first credit as producer alongside Kevin Feige. This soon became a trend following Phase 4, with other executives stepping in as producers. The new hands were probably done as a way to ease the load on Feige, as he was soon becoming the head of Marvel Entertainment, and with all the projects coming up, the work needed to spread around. There were two things Marvel wanted to explore more in the movie. One was Hope becoming Wasp. Seeing how she was popular in the first film, giving her the spotlight made sense. The other was the quantum realm. As it's currently the epicenter for the MCU, this film can be seen as the groundwork for that. Another important factor was for the movie to be fun. With Infinity War having such a downer ending, Marvel wanted their next film to be more lighthearted to lift fans' spirits before seeing Endgame. Ant-Man and the Wasp premiered in 2018, a couple months after Infinity War, and was another sizable success, with critics and audiences praising the film's comedic tone. Now that the Infinity Saga is wrapped up, does this movie still work on its own? Let's shrink down and see. The film opens much like the last one, with a flashback to the 80s. It's essentially an extended retelling of Janet's disappearance. We see her and Hank say goodbye to Hope, and some reused footage from the first movie. Janet was played by Haley Lovett, cast for her eyes that resembled Michelle Pfeiffer. This was because Reed wanted Pfeiffer to play Janet in a proper sequel, which eventually happened. Once again, they knock it out of the park with the CGD aging. They used Lovett and Pfeiffer's look at the time as a reference, and did the same for Douglas. Anyway, after Scott managed to come back from the quantum realm, Hank started to wonder if Janet could still be alive. He shows Hope some old plans for a quantum tunnel, which he plans to use to bring her back. In the present, Scott and his daughter Cassie pull off a pretend heist in his new home. Cassie adores that her father is Ant-Man, and constantly dreams about fighting alongside him. Their relationship is one of the things that still holds strong here. Their playdate is interrupted when Scott trips the alarm on his ankle bracelet. He's had to spend the past 2 years on house arrest as part of the plea he took to get out of the raft. We also learn from the FBI agent assigned to him, Jimmy Woo, played by Randall Park, that because he used Hank's tech, both he and Hope violate the Sokovia Accords and are now fugitives. This has put a strain on Scott's relationship with them, bitter for not telling them what he was doing and putting them in a tight spot. Scott has only 3 days left in his confinement, so he has to find ways to keep himself busy until then. After a pointless montage, Scott dreams about the quantum realm and sees a memory from Janet's perspective. Unsure what it means, he calls Hank from a hidden phone and leaves a voicemail for him. Later, an ant puts him under and he wakes up in a shrunken car with Hope. I will give the film credit for expanding the possibilities of shrinking and growing objects. It's more than just a suit now. Inanimate objects like cars and toys, which we saw a bit in the previous film, are now typical items that can use this tech. Hope questions Scott about his dream and explains that they used a giant ant as his stand-in at home to keep the FBI off their radar. He apologizes for Germany and wants to make things right. Hope takes him to their new lab, which is a building that can also shrink. He's met with a rightfully upset Hank and says that the suit he used was destroyed to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. While their attitude is justifiable, it reaffirms one of my major problems with this film. It feels like everyone keeps unnecessarily crapping on Scott. Yes, he did go about things the wrong way, but his heart was always in the right place. I get that they're making him the underdog, but they already trod this ground in the first film. Also, it makes Hank and Hope seem like jerks, which is not a good thing when you're supposed to be rooting for them. But I digress. Hope exposes about them making the quantum tunnel. When they made a test run, the door to the realm was open for a split second. 5 minutes later, they got Scott's call. When Scott entered the realm, they believe he may have inadvertently made contact with Janet, which is confirmed when he recounts the dream, and it turns out to be a memory from Hope's childhood. They need to extract her coordinates from Scott's head and get to her before the window of opportunity closes. However, they're missing a MacGuffin needed to keep the tunnel open. They go to black market dealer Sonny Birch, played by Walton Goggins, to buy said part. When they go for the deal, Birch reveals that he has a friend in the FBI who gave him a tip on who they are and what they're up to. He wants to sell their tech to the highest bidder, but Hope refuses. So he calls off the deal, leaving Hope to suit up as the Wasp and take it by force. The Wasp suit is pretty cool and different from the Ant-Man suit, at least. She gets the part only for a mysterious figure in white that can phase like a ghost, attack her, and steal the part and the lab. With nowhere else to go, Scott takes them to the new security business he started with Luis and their partners, called XCon Security. The comedy displayed here doesn't really land as well in the first film, not to mention that Luis and the others feel like superfluous characters here. You could cut them out and not miss a thing. Desperate to find a way to retrieve the lab, Hank suggests they visit an old colleague during his SHIELD days. They go to a university and meet with Bill Foster, played by Lawrence Fishburne. Foster was a part of Hank's Goliath project back in the day, a nod to his comic book counterpart. Like Darren Cross, the two's relationship was strained because of conflicting ideals. He tells them that while he doesn't know how to track their lab, they could try using tech from one of their regulators. Hank says that's a problem as he got rid of the regulators when he upgraded the suits. However, Scott reveals that he does in fact have the original suit hidden away in a trophy. Unfortunately, Cassie took it to school for show and tell. They work quickly to get the suit as the one Scott is using is currently malfunctioning. Another major issue I have here is the sidetracking. It takes forever for the plot to progress because they have to stop what they're doing constantly and retrieve an item or go to another location. Anyway, they're able to use the regulator to find the lab. As Scott and Hope prepare to take it back, they discuss Germany and what would have happened if Hope had been there with them. They get to the house where the lab is, only to be knocked out by the ghost. She reveals herself as Ava Starr, played by Hannah John-Kamen, when they awake. Foster is also shown to be in cahoots with her. Ava exposits that her father Elias, played by Michael Cervers, was another associate of Hank's, who he discredited after a disagreement. Hank, however, claims that Elias stole his work and tried to profit from him. The movie never clarifies which side is right, which is another problem. Elias tried to make his own version of the quantum tunnel, but it caused an explosion, killing everyone but Ava. Her fate was arguably worse as she came with the uncontrollable phasing, which ripped apart her cells and stitched them back together constantly. Foster found her and took care of her. We get another flashback with more great de-aging, with Fishburne's son used as a reference. He explains that S.H.I.E.L.D. used her condition as a weapon, turning her into a trained assassin. I wonder if the MCU will repeat this trope in the future. Taskmaster! Ava and Foster plan to use the quantum energy Janet absorbed over the years to cure her. Hank says that will kill Janet, but Foster believes he can make it work. The three summon giant ants and manage to escape through a clever trick and retrieve the lab. They plant it in a remote place in the woods and try turning on the tunnel. It still doesn't work, but thankfully Janet is able to control Scott's body and help them calibrate the system to find her. This is by far the funniest scene, with Paul Rudd pulling off a hilarious feminine charm. Meanwhile, Luis and the others at XCon are captured and interrogated by Birch and his men at their location. They try to repeat Luis's exposition stories, but it's much more forced here. Ava uses this to find them, while Birch calls the FBI friend to get the lab first. Luis then calls Scott and tells them they're coming. Scott has to hurry home, much to Hank and Hope's anger. He makes it in time, but the others aren't so lucky. With a little pep talk from Cassie, Scott gets back into action and breaks them out. They find the lab much quicker this time and plan to stop Ava before it's too late. Hank decides to be the one to go through the tunnel, while Scott distracts Ava so Hope can get to the lab. Unfortunately, Birch is on their trail, so we get another sidetrack with a random Stan Lee cameo as Hope and Scott fight to get the lab from him. While we're here, I should mention the action feels basic. Most of the time, it's by the numbers and rarely has emotional weight. Scott is forced to go Giant Man to get to the lab, but the size is too much. Hope gets him back to normal size as Ava gets to the lab and prepares to extract Janet's energy. Hank travels down the quantum realm and is overwhelmed by all the sensation. He then has his mind put back in his own home, seeing visions of Hope, Scott, and Foster. Janet is then able to reach out to him and use some power she picked up in the realm to center his mind, and the two share a heartfelt reunion. They begin to ascend, but Ava is killing Janet from the extraction. Foster tries to stop her, believing she is going too far, but she is desperate to fix herself. She may not be the most developed Marvel villain, but Ava is interesting and has a good motivation, which is more than I can say for other villains like Birch. Scott and Hope stop Ava just as Hank and Janet arrive, where mother and daughter reunite. Janet also uses her powers to heal Ava and fix her affliction. However, there's little time to celebrate as Scott has to return home for the end of his sentencing, and the rest need to avoid being caught by the FBI. All goes well, and Scott's house arrest is lifted, much to Wu's chagrin. The film ends with Ava and Foster facing their consequences, and Scott spending more time with Cassie and building a relationship with Hope. The mid-credits scene shows Scott going through a smaller quantum tunnel to get more particles for Ava. However, he ends up trapped in the quantum realm as Hank, Janet, and Hope are shown to have blipped out of existence from Thanos' snap. This sets Scott up for Endgame. The post-credits scene is a rather lame joke, showing the stand-in Ant still posing as Scott while the rest of the world is in a panic. And with that, Ant-Man and the Wasp comes to a droll conclusion. When I first saw the movie in theaters, I'll admit that I enjoyed it. I thought it was a genuinely fun time. I see a lot more of the flaws pop out now. My biggest problem is that the whole thing feels frivolous, which is a lot considering all that happens. I know this is a small-scale hero we're talking about, but the first movie still had more significant threats and implication. This didn't feel like a necessary event. It's interesting because I've had friends tell me they didn't like this movie from the get-go, and now I see why. I would rather watch this over Dark World, mainly because it feels like a better waste of my time, but this film is definitely on the lower half for me. While Ant-Man would have to wait before being saved, Marvel would take one more trip into the past to clear the path for a new hero. Join me next time when we look at Captain Marvel, and see if the MCU's first female leading standalone film is still as empowering. Until then, if you want to keep up with my videos, then be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and check out my VODs on my other channel. Feel free to leave a like and share with friends if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.